Chapter 6. The Mark of the Crow. The fog in Southwark hung like wool over the yard of Mortimer's textile works. Men shuffled toward the gates with their dinner pails swinging, shoulders bent against the damp. They'd worked here long enough to know better than to be late. Mr. Thornton hated lateness more than the devil hated hymns. But it wasn't the clock that stopped them that morning. It was the body. One of the loom boys screamed first. The rest followed his gaze. Above the yard, from the high iron gantry where the foreman paced, a man hung upside down by the ankles. Stripped to the waist, his flesh was scored with lash marks old and new. His throat was cut wide, blood dried black against his chest, and jammed into the wound were shreds of his own blueprints, rolled and stuffed until his mouth bulged like a grotesque parody of speech. His hands were gone, hacked at the wrists, and nailed to the door of the overseer's office, palms outstretched, a hammer driven through each. And above the office door, painted in dripping pitch, was the crow, its wings spread across the wall, talons reaching for the nailed hands, its head tilted down as though feeding. The men stood frozen. Some crossed themselves, some spat in the mud. Others stared in grim silence, their faces unreadable. "Sweet Christ," someone muttered, though it sounded more like awe than prayer. One man whispered, "It's him," the crow. Another answered, voice low. Then Thornton had it coming. And truly, few doubted it. Thornton had been an engineer, but he'd prided himself less on machines than on breaking men to run them. He'd cut meal times to 8 minutes. He'd docked pay for coughs, for trips to the privy. He'd beaten a boy of 12 so hard the child pissed blood for a week. 3 years ago, a fire had swept through the lower floor, and Thornton had locked the doors to keep workers from fleeing. To protect company property. 23 had died screaming in the smoke, and every man in the yard knew it. Now here he was, strung like meat, blueprint shreds stuffed in his mouth, hands nailed where all could see. By the time constables pushed through the gathering crowd, whispers had already spread into the alleys and taverns. The crow had struck. Justice had come. At Scotland Yard, the lamplight burned low against the damp walls. Files leaned like crooked gravestones on the shelves. On the far wall, a great map of London bristled with pins, scraps of paper fluttering where the drafts touched them. Several bore a crude crow, sketched black over their corners. Inspector Jonathan Locke stood before the map, hands clasped behind his back, his grey eyes steady and pale. He was not a large man, nor quick in his movements, but there was a weight to his stillness that made the room feel smaller when he occupied it. A constable finished his account, cap twisting between nervous fingers. "Milton Thornton, sir, at Mortimer's works, hung from the gantry, hands nailed, mouth stuffed with blueprints. Locke's eyes didn't move from the map." "The blueprints," he said softly. "Fitting. A man who used men as cogs in his designs, silenced by his own drawings." He turned at last, gaze cold. "The crow is deliberate, symbolic. He kills with a message." The sergeant by the hearth shifted uneasily. "The men say it's justice, sir." That Thornton got what he deserved. Locke's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Justice is a word men cling to when they have nothing else. This was not justice. This was recruitment. He stepped back to his desk, pipe in hand, unlit, turning it slowly between his fingers. "Every crow scrawled on brick, every corpse left for dawn, is a sermon. The crow preaches, and the poor hear him gladly. He has turned murder into liturgy." The room fell still. The constables watched him warily. "So," Locke continued, "we must turn his liturgy into his noose." He drew a clean page toward him and wrote 3 names in neat, sharp script. Bolter, Finch, Hargreaves, mill owners, all hated. "We will craft rumour. Whisper in taverns and lodging houses, each circle its own story. John Bolter will visit Spitalfields. Gideon Finch will tour Limehouse. Roland Hargreaves, Bethnal Green. All false. He tapped the page with his pen. Each rumour planted in only one place. When the crow strikes, the sight tells us which circle carried his voice, which tavern is his ear. The sergeant frowned. That means one of them, one of those men, dies, just to give us a lead. Just a lead, echoed another, voice rising. And if the crow doesn't strike, then we've risked lives for nothing. You're gambling with men's blood. Locke set down his pen. He steepled his fingers, gaze sharp enough to pin the man to the wall. Better one man than 10. Better one engineer gutted on a gantry than a dozen mills set aflame. Better one corpse than 100 converts. The constable shook his head. But sir, that's necessary. Locke cut him off. His voice was low, even, all the more chilling for its calm. Sacrifice is the coin of order, and I intend to spend it. Silence pressed in. The fire cracked in the grate. Locke leaned back in his chair, pipe turning once more in his hand. The crow believes himself a phantom. We will show him he leaves footprints. We will show him his flock betrays him with every whisper. His eyes flick to the map again. And then we will close our hand. The men shifted, but none spoke further. The crows drawn across the map seemed darker in the lamplight, their wings spreading wider over London's streets.